Hi there, my name is Nik Moore and I'm the Production Director at Mindset Communications. Thanks for taking the time to view this short series of videos which will take you through the best ways in which to produce a live event within the beauty sector. Now, whether you work for a fashion house, a cosmetics company, hair product supplier, fragrance company, or even a clothes manufacturer, I think you'll find this series of videos incredibly useful. Your industry is quite unique, really. Your live events very often have to have a very high level of theatre, a high level of the wow factor. I suppose your events are very often, well, pretty sexy, to be honest with you. So we've come at this series with this in mind, and over the next few videos we'll be showing you best practice, shortcuts, and even things to avoid, all in pursuance of making your event have the highest return on investment possible. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you've got to do is set objectives for your event. To be frank, I don't talk about objectives, they sound too rigid. Instead, I like to think of outcomes. These just get the mind thinking more about tangible results. Now, I'm going to challenge you here. In my experience, many clients don't really give this part of the process enough time and attention. The amount of times I hear people saying that one of their objectives is to motivate the audience. I mean, if your event doesn't motivate, you shouldn't have produced the event in the first place. You should have saved your money. I mean, that just isn't a meaningful objective. I always use the SMART model. Now, yeah, I know it's a real corporate model, you've probably heard of it before, but it really does work and so few people really do stick to it. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timescales. The words speak for themselves. So don't set an outcome such as, I want my event to increase sales afterwards. Nah, the outcome should be to drive sales up by 4% over a 6-month time period using the latest product launches and marketing campaigns. You know, that is a lot more specific and it's timescales worked in there. You could make it even more specific, but anyway, you get my gist. When working these outcomes up, do get quite a number of people involved, even heads of departments. I don't often see HR people, for example, at this stage when we're talking about an internal event, nor IT people at meetings on external events. I mean, take IT people, think about it. IT people can be really some good, useful help with some of the social media aspects. Or even think about more junior people, those who are more client-facing or more in touch with modern technology and modern trends, for instance. Anyway, my point is, think who really could help you put together these outcomes, and then once you've got them worked out, reduce the committee down to 2 or 3 key decision makers. Believe me, a dozen people on an event committee doesn't work. I'll talk more about this in a later video. The other thing you've got to consider is what your company as a whole is up to in terms of its 5-year strategic plan. We quite often get asked to spend a lot of time on creating a snappy or creative theme as if it's the be-all and end-all. The theme, you know, is really important, I appreciate, but sometimes I feel that too much focus is on that and not to do with what the event can do to build upon your company's overall strategic plan. Remember, a live event, whether that be a product launch, or an annual conference, a consumer event, etc., they should never be regarded as a standalone. If you keep your long-term, your mid and long-term strategic plans in the back of your mind, this can really influence your thinking at this stage, and arguably the event naturally will become more effective. Now, the other thing I want to talk about here is listening. Again, you can very easily fall into a trap here. If you're a senior manager or director, perhaps sometimes you can put on an event that you think is effective, but don't forget, you're only one person and you may not be reflective of the typical audience member. So the trick here is to listen to your audience. Get pre-event research conducted. Ask them, salient questions, maybe even so blunt as to ask them what they expect to see or what they expect to be addressed at the live event. Failing that, speak to the marketing department or the HR departments, because I bet you they'll have some pretty useful information, research, and insights into how your audience are feeling at that moment in time. Also be aware of what's happening out there in the wider environment. What's the competition up to, the economy, recent trends, etc., etc. And now isn't the time to be thinking about the creative look and feel of your event. That's the next step. So don't get tied up just yet with what the event is going to look like. This is something that I see quite a lot. People dive into the creativity too early. If you've done this process, step 1, properly, you may well have a few sides of A4 with lots of good notes and ideas, reflecting the outcomes that you've mapped out. Now is the time to condense all of that information into 3, 4, well maybe 5 at maximum, 5 objectives or outcomes. Too many outcomes makes the event very diluted, so focus on only a handful and you'll be amazed at how much more effective your event becomes. Final thing, take the time and put the effort into this part of the process. I've said it before and I'll say it again, take time and effort to put into this part of the process. I promise you everything thereafter is just so much easier if you've got clear, concise, measurable, specific, realistic outcomes. Remember that SMART model, it does work, I promise you. See you next time.